Hi everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and together we are ThinkerThemer, and we are back from our big trip, which, you know, we were at Tokyo Game Market, as most of you know, but then after that we went straight to Birmingham for UK Games Expo, and we have never been to UK Games Expo before. Yeah, so we wanted to make a whole video talking about that, but the reason why we've been so quiet on the channel is because after that we took a bit of a vacation and we have been down in the south of Spain.
Yes, we started in Sevilla and then we went to Cordoba and then Granada, and we saw the Alhambra, which is incredible.
What an amazing part of the world. And it was 40 degrees Celsius every day, which is too hot for many people, but perfect temperature for me.
It was...
And
chef's
Maggie.
kiss, double chef's kiss.
Yeah. And now we're back in Melbourne and it's freezing cold. And so now all...
freezing for us, Australians.
Freezing for us. And so all we can do is play all the games that we brought back with us. But let's get on to UK Games Expo.
Now, with it being our first time at UK Games Expo, we didn't really know what to expect. So we were like, I knew that it wasn't going to be as large as Essen or potentially even Gen Con. I knew that there was potentially more playing than there was the retail, but we had no idea kind of going in.
And it is the third largest in the world, and it's been growing every year, and people that stopped to say hi, thanks to everybody who came over and said hi to us, they were telling us that they've been going for many years and they've seen this like explosion of this con, and it was actually way bigger than both of us expected. Yes. All of the publishers that are there kind of spread across 4 main halls, and the halls are pretty big. Like I was pretty surprised at how big it was, because maybe, you know, it's not quite the size of Gen Con, but definitely approaching that level.
Yeah, it was really kind of quite close. Now, the good thing about it was also the aisles were actually wide enough that even though there were tons of exhibitors and like lots and lots to see, you never really felt, I think only one time it felt like a little bit like, oh, this is a little bit cramped. But most of the time you could kind of walk around really comfortably. The people were so lovely, like the atmosphere and the vibe was just super friendly as well.
Really friendly. Lots of people just, you know, kind of making friends on the spot to sit down at a demo table. And that's another thing that surprised me, is there were a lot of demo tables. So at Gen Con, it's more focused on, you know, kind of purchases, and then you take the gaming into the kind of gaming halls. Yeah. And then at Essen, it's kind of, there's a lot more demo tables, but it's really hard to get a spot at them, we found. But at UK Games Expo, we found we didn't have to like plan too much. We would just kind of go up and put our name down, and then there was, you know, a time slot available. So we were pretty lucky to be able to demo a lot of games that we're going to talk about next. But that was something that I thought was really great, that if you're just interested in looking at a publisher's entire catalog, they had a lot of space per publisher.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of publishers, I was surprised at how many like independent and like kind of indie stalls
that was a huge surprise.
Like
it was almost like elements of Tokyo Game Market. The thing that we love about Tokyo Game Market is you meet the designers and they've just got copies of their own game. There was a lot more of that at UK Games Expo. There were a lot of people that were, you know, it was their first game and they were about to have a crowdfunding campaign, and so they were there trying to showcase their game. And that was really cool. Very different atmosphere to Gen Con and Essen in that regard, because obviously it's a bit cheaper to show there, or that's just, you know, where it's grown from. And so there are games there that Maggie and I had never seen before, like, and publishers that we'd never seen before as well. So that was really cool. You got a sense of like all the UK brands and a really kind of different style and aesthetic than we're used to seeing.
Even a lot of like some of the artists, which I felt like the artists part of it wasn't as big as it is in Gen Con now.
That's true.
But the aesthetic, I really love like a lot of the aesthetic sort of angle that they were taking. So there were some unplanned purchases that happened.
There were. We weren't intending to take that many games because obviously we were going on a holiday afterwards on vacation, so we didn't want to take too much with us.
Traveling in trains and stuff, not ideal to then have like all this sort of luggage. So we're like, we have to be very restrained.
Very disciplined.
Yes. Yeah.
And the other thing that I noticed was a really diverse crowd, like tons of families, so lots of kids were there, and it really seemed like a great couple of days out that people would take. Maybe they'll travel in from London and people were staying nearby. And there was that real atmosphere that you get with Gen Con, where everyone's staying in hotels nearby, and then people are playing in the hotel lobbies in the evening. We spent every night playing in our hotel lobby. We were only there for 2 nights, but that was great to sit down and play some games with friends. We also knew that there was the big hall as well, so there was a huge hall with a library. We didn't get a chance to try that out, but certainly you could borrow games and sit in there, and it was just really interesting because there were like people that were obviously very new to gaming, and then I think the con also has a history of wargaming as well, so there was all this tabletop setup going on everywhere as well in those big halls. So I think there was kind of a little bit of something for everybody. That was a cool really mix. Interesting. But I think given the time of year, probably what you don't see at UK Games Expo is if you're just going to pick up the latest Euro that's just kind of hitting shelves, I think those releases tend to be, Gen Con and Essen throughout the year. And so it's not so much of that, but in exchange, you get all of these indie little titles that you may not find anywhere else. So I really liked it. I thought it was really cool. So now what we're going to talk about is some of the games that we had an opportunity to demo and some of our early thoughts on those. Remember, we've only played them once or sometimes just a couple of rounds, but we wanted to give you some thoughts on that, and Maggie will put the covers on the screen, and then we'll jump into our haul because we did pick up a few games and we'll talk about why we picked them up. But firstly, the games that we demoed. Now, we did manage to demo the new game from Mighty Boards that's up and coming called For the Gods. Now, this was, they only had one copy of the prototype, really popular table.
It was very popular. That was a hard one to sneak in.
It was. I think we were the last game on the last day, but they snuck us in, so that was fantastic, and we got a chance to try it. And actually, I was really surprised because this game is quite, big. It takes up a lot of table space.
It looks more intimidating than it actually is to learn.
Yes, and everybody has a bag of pieces of tower, and essentially it's an area control game. You are going to be moving your ship around to different islands, and then you're going to be building a tower, and you're trying to have a more powerful tower there than opponents so you can get the most points at the end of the game.
Or thematically speaking, a monument for the gods, as is the title of the game.
Thank you for adding that in. But also each of the gods have like different powers as well. So when you're moving around the map, you're picking up powers, and what's interesting is all the pieces are contained in a bag, and you're drawing out pieces that you have the opportunity to use right before you take your turn. And so you're only able to work with the power of the pieces that you pull, as well as those god powers that you also may or may not pull out of your bag. So there's a bit of like, people know what you're taking and adding to your bag, but then the timing of when that comes out is really interesting. And so a lot of the time I found myself in this game trying to anticipate what other people are doing. Now, the thing I liked about this game, super fast teach.
Yes.
Like, this is going to be one of those really accessible area control games that you can just get to the table and get started, and it looks great on the table. It's very physical.
Yeah.
Has
3D.
Little, 3D
so kind of
things.
Stacking your monument up.
So I think this is going to be a really accessible, popular title. The only thing I would say is it's probably, is not super new in terms of like what we've seen before, but I did like that novelty of having that bag and drawing out the pieces, so you're never quite exactly sure what your opponents are going to be able to do. So there's kind of like a, should I do this now, or should I hold off, or should I go over here and take this area, hoping that they've already used all their pieces, so you're kind of trying to keep track of what people are doing.
It also played pretty snappily, so it actually didn't feel like one of those games that's going to drag on. The other game that we played was Yotei, which I really wanted to play because the artwork is again one of those things that is doing a lot of heavy lifting initially, like from a first impression.
Gorgeous. And this is a game that they picked up from Japan, so it's a Japanese designer, and the way that they have stayed true to the original title is amazing. They have these little wooden potatoes, which are actually made in Hokkaido. And they look just like potatoes. And then you've got these little crates as well that the potatoes go in to hide the bids that you're placing, because ultimately this is a tableau building game, and so you're kind of using worker placement to place your workers way on cards that you want to draft, but some of them require you to make a bid, and those bids are with potatoes, and they're secretly held in crates. And so if everyone wants to go for the same card, it's the person that's bid the most potatoes.
Yeah.
So it's just really cute. I really liked that it was kind of a race to see who could build up their engine the fastest with the resources that are printed on cards.
So quirky. The theme is quirky. Like as you're kind of going through it, even like the cards, it's again relatively simple to pick up. There's a little bit of an element of making sure that you get the sequencing right, because sometimes it's like, oh, I was kind of counting on this card to be able to then get this other thing, like the things that you had reserved. So that's one of those. It's one of those ones that make sure. But again, it's not a complicated game.
No,
it's
but
more charming.
Exactly. That one was probably more my jam, just because of the artwork and the potatoes, and I like tableau building games. So I'm excited to play that one more. We can get our hands on a copy. I think they sold out as well.
Yeah. Well,
were they selling? Or
I don't think they were even selling.
It went to Kickstarter.
The Kickstarter I think just finished.
But everybody sold out of all the games that they had. I think even the publishers were really surprised just at how many more people there were.
A lot of times.
So day one, a lot of the things were selling out, and they had limited supply on the other days because they were trying to hold back the stock. But that's great. It means lots of people are still in the hobby, and the publishers are doing well, so they're going to keep making games. And the next game that we had the opportunity to play was 8 Dragons. Now this was one of the hotness of the cons. Everybody wanted to check this game out. Even
Beautiful table presence.
Actually, it's on Kickstarter at the moment and doing really, really well. But everyone wanted to sit down and have a game of this, and they only had one table going, but they were doing a great demo of it as well. Because this game is absolutely stunning.
Yes.
So
it's just like that. And also physically, like the mechanic of having all these different dragons latch onto one another. So it's like as you're kind of pulling them through this sort of figure eight part of the board, they're all kind of like a train of dragons moving along. It's very satisfying.
Yeah, actually, it's by the publishers and designers of Kelp, and so they did a beautiful job of that game. This one, the production value is what's drawing everybody in. And then so we did get an opportunity to sit down and play this. And the thing I will say about this game is if you like positive player interaction, I think this has the most positive player interaction of any game I've ever played, because you are moving around this figure eight and essentially you are deciding where to stop, and wherever you stop, you're going to take that action. But then everybody else that's connected to your chain of dragons, so there's these little baby dragons that belong to each other player, and they connect through as you move through the figure of 8. Wherever they stop, they are also going to get that action. And so you're kind of wondering, well, if I stop here, then Maggie's also going to get this great lot of money, and I don't want that to happen. So maybe I'll move like a little bit further and kind of I'll take something lesser so that Maggie gets nothing at all. I don't know. That might be the case. But essentially that's what you're doing. You're moving through, and everybody on every turn, it feels like you get a turn on every turn because there's just stuff happening all the time. And the main thing that you're trying to do is collect tiles to add into your personal territory.
Yeah, like a cave. You're essentially creating the grottos, is that the right word, of of the cave?
Yeah.
And then they'll have the different tiles will have different scoring conditions. So everyone's going to be playing almost like their own mini game based on the objectives that they're collecting.
Well, so there's tiles that you collect to build out your area, and then there's also scoring condition tiles that you're also going to add to your area in order to actually make them worth anything. So that's really interesting too, because you're waiting for a scoring tile to come up that's really going to work with what you've built in front of you. So I thought this game is going to be so popular. It is really, really charming, and I really liked this unique kind of mechanic of moving through this figure 8. I really liked it. The only thing I will say is that for a lot of the game, I had 2 babies on the bench. And what I mean by that is there is a mechanic in here that allows people to remove a baby dragon from somewhere and essentially disconnect them from the chain and put them on the bench until they
go
come back
in the queue, so that when
another
as they kind of the big dragons come back on, then they start latching back on. But you can be quite far in the queue, so they might have to wait a bit.
And so we played a 4-player game, and I have to say that every single person, when they were able to, took my baby dragons off the board.
Look, it's just
I felt very targeted, and actually that did really set me back, because if you think that that each one of your baby dragons is activating when they're connected to somebody else's chain, you lose a lot of turns if that is happening. So you could say that in this game it's possible to maybe like gang up on one player. I might say that about me. And that's how I excuse the fact that I lost terribly. And Maggie actually won by so many points.
I did not expect that. It's one of those games where you don't necessarily, you're like, oh, I feel like this is going to do well with scoring.
No, we all expected that. We were like, Maggie is definitely winning. You just did really, really well. So anyway, that is 8 dragons.
Yes.
And then we also had the opportunity to play Almighty.
Yes, this is actually one that was on my most anticipated for the year. And this is by the same team that did Roll Camera, which we were like, oh yeah, like I really love, like I have a background in filmmaking, and so like I loved all the kind of in-jokes, and I love like their artwork. It's always like little beans doing different things.
But it was cooperative.
Yeah, and so and ultimately it just didn't hit as much or as hard as I wanted it to for us. And so with Almighty, I was like, oh, like again, I really am attracted to the artwork. I love this concept of, you know, you're playing as these really petty gods that are kind of deciding like you're all out for kind of like glory and belief or faith from the humans on the board. But it's all done with this like this sort of quirky sense of humor that's very kind of tongue-in-cheek, and so I was like, oh, you know, I'm drawn to that theme. I hope it's satisfying, and I loved my time playing with this. There's so many like funny little jokes within like the thematically like well linked into the different gods and like unique kind of powers, and then also the humans that you're either blessing or smiting.
Because I'll just quickly say that mechanically it is again area control, but you may not really care about some areas over others, and that's where this I wouldn't call it like take that mechanic, but there's certainly a lot of opportunities to, you know, destroy something that you believe someone else is building up for a reason. And so there's like all these different territories, and you can build little villages in them, and some of them will have the flag in them, and then also you can add followers into them, and then you can have
mess around with that a lot, like then like have people like kind of migrate or like smiting in one area or a disaster in one area, and then there's like, or then there's also like the god of like that's of love, and it's like then it's making couples or breaking them up, or it was just like there's so much thematically
because everyone has a secret objective, and so that is kind of funny because you can kind of throw people off what you're working on, and then people aren't really sure, and then at the end round there can be a lot of chaos in terms of like, well, haha, I'm taking this area and I'm taking control of it, and it's worth the most points, and you know, I've just ruined all of your plans.
It's one of those games that gets also more powerful each round. Like you start kind of the cards that you're getting because you're kind of cycling through your deck in a way. It's kind of like a deck builder in a way, but everyone has their own powers.
And enjoyed my time so because of that reason, it is incredibly chaotic. It is like it's purposely chaotic, and so you have to go in knowing that this game is designed to be fun, and it's designed to generate laughter and last minute changes in who's winning this area or not. And for me, that's a little bit too chaotic, but I have to say that game was where we laughed the most at the table. We sat and played with 2 people we'd never met before, and all 4 of us by the end were just having a great old time.
Thematically,
laughing.
It's like you're telling the story of like, oh, well, it turned out like, you know, this particular couple, like, you know, they got together, or like they're a better match, or like there's just so much richness to like create rich banter. That is also hilarious. So that was Almighty, which I particularly enjoy.
Now, the next game we played, I wasn't expecting at all. It's a game called Dewan, like Dewan. And actually a viewer, Claire, if you're watching, Claire came up to us and said hi, and then invited us to play a game with her. And we were like, yeah, great, why not? And we had never heard of this game before. And it was a lot of fun. So thanks for inviting us, Claire. But this game, interestingly, is a game about hand management. And essentially you are trying to use cards in your hand to map your way across these different terrains, and you're essentially laying claim to these different areas in order to meet different objectives, which you're also going to be collecting and committing to along the way. And that sounds very vague, but what I really enjoyed about this game is the production. The production was gorgeous. Every player has this player board which have cards that kind of slot into it, really clear iconography about the timing of when things happened. I just, like, it was one of those games that just made the teach so easy. Everything was working for it. I felt like I could just get straight into it, understood what I needed to do. I think everybody really enjoyed it. I personally really loved the way that it worked, and immediately after we finished playing, I wanted to play it again, which is always a really good sign. Like, I thought it was just like a great medium weight game. Like, it wasn't too heavy.
No, it was very, it was kind of heady and strategic enough, but it was, very easy to kind of get going. I think for me, it was still a little bit more on like the abstract side.
Yeah, it was definitely abstract.
So at the end, you're like, oh, it'd be interesting to, play it again. I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm good.
You're done. I
feel like
I was just really surprised because I hadn't heard much about it, and it was one of those cards where, once you use the cards out of your hand, you have to draft new ones from the market, and you're thinking ahead because you need different types of terrain in order to, make the next few steps. Yeah. So it does force you to plan a little bit ahead. I usually like that kind of game because I'm like, okay, over my next 2 or 3 turns, what do I need to do? Yeah. And it wasn't so complex that was impossible. So I really enjoyed my time with that.
It was really funny when people are like, so have you played anything like today? It's like, oh yeah, we played the one. It's like, which one?
Which one?
The one.
The one. The one.
No. DEWAN.
The one.
Not the one. The one. Confusing sometimes to speak about the title.
And I know a game you wanted to talk about, which is Threaded.
Threaded, which is actually been published by Osprey Games. So this is an interesting one because it's all about, you're essentially making, I can't remember the name of the tapestries that you're making, but you're essentially, it's worker placement, but it's one of those games where you're kind of placing all your workers initially, and then it's all playing out essentially based on a set order, and then like whoever kind of got into those worker placement places first. So it's not like, oh, I place and I take my action. It's like, no, you're placing everywhere, and then the whole thing kind of plays out. And then what you're kind of collecting is ultimately recipe fulfillment. So you got these different goals, and you have the different threads, and the threads need particular, the patterns that need particular kind of threads or types of colors, essentially. And so that's represented by these little wooden cubes, but it's got this sort of dice tower that is the randomizer of those color cubes as well. It's kind of reminded me of like Frostpunk, where like you had the coal and you don't really know how many like are going to fall. So it's kind of using a similar mechanic. I thought it was interesting because it was, again, like very logical in terms of the order, but there was enough going on to make me go, intriguing. Like all of those elements I have played before, but it was interesting to kind of see them all together. So I only ended up having like half of a game. That was entirely my fault because I was like running late in between demos. But it's one that I'm intrigued to play more. I feel like it's more on the accessible side. So it's more like partly, I wouldn't say just pure gateway, but it's like a gateway and upskilling kind of
Gateway
game.
Plus.
Gateway Plus,
Interesting.
Particularly for people that like that theme. Yeah.
I want to talk about a little game that we played, just walking around. We met the designer. The game is called Durian Smuggler. And so durian is the fruit, if you don't know. It's a fruit that, you can get it a lot in Singapore and Southeast Asian countries, and a lot of the time it's banned from public places because it smells really bad. It smells way worse than what it tastes, but it's a very pungent but creamy fruit. And so this game, I love the theme because it's about like trying to smuggle durian in your luggage. And so this game is quite abstract. It works a bit like, those puzzles. What are they called? Those ones where you those slider puzzles where you're trying to move things around. I don't know what they're called, but it's not really like that because actually things just move in rows and columns. But basically, you're looking at your hand, and some of the cards that you have durians on them, and some of them don't. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to score the cards that have durians into your score pile. But you can't just take them out of your hand. You first have to hide them in luggage. and then you're going to be pushing the luggage around and taking one from the end of a row or column that then you're going to look at and secretly put away in your scoring pile. And so essentially it becomes this really interesting, like, did you put something valuable there?
It's a bit of a bluffing
Did that
element.
have a durian in it? Do I think Maggie is trying to put that down for herself and then grab it later? Because then there's this really like tricky element of like you can only push certain luggage with the right colored luggage. And so it's much more difficult than what it sounds actually. I was quite surprised at how thinky it was. I was like, how do I get that piece of luggage? How do I push that to make that come out? And
it was an interesting, mechanically it was kind of, it was an interesting use of that sort of
it was.
conveyor belt, but in multiple directions. So every card essentially has a different direction. And so depending on which one you're activating, it'll make the line go in a different way. So that was intriguing. I think it actually can play higher player counts. We obviously played head to head because it was again one of those like end of day, like, things are about to, but because I think even like the designer said, like when you have multiple people, there's even more like trying to keep track of like,
that's the other thing is like it's kind of memory because you're putting something down that's really valuable for yourself to pick up, and then you're like, wait, where did I put that? Where did I put the durian? Or was I trying to fake someone out? I can't remember. So that was an interesting little puzzle game. And then the other game I wanted to talk about is the roller skating.
Roller disco.
Roller disco.
Yes. It's like a shedding game by the same designer as what is it? Tricky Landings.
Tricky Landing, which we've talked about on the channel, which is the trick-taking game where you're kind of like throwing cards, which is really interesting. But another game that we did pick up and we'll talk about in our whole video, Sakana Stack. But anyway, the designer was showing us this roller disco game, which is kind of really interesting shedding game because you are shedding in a circular way. And you're either going in ascending or descending with your values, and you have to play on top of other stacks. So with the right colors. So just a really interesting concept. And there was a lot of like choosing when you were going to stop to make it more difficult for the next player to shed out cards. And then there was a wild card that you could pick up.
But then like also like allows you to like skip things or turn, like sort of shift the direction that you're going in.
Exactly.
So it did kind of make me think of like, that sort of roller disco where you're like skating in one direction and then they're like, oh, I'm going to turn around and do this and like do fast. So it was an interesting, it was fairly simple, but tricky to kind of wrap your head around. Like, wait, how am I going to work out that sequence, either all going up or all going down?
It was very interesting. And Mike says that that's going to crowdfunding soon. So it was great to be able to demo that game. But that's pretty much it in terms of demos. What we're going to talk about now is just our little haul, not as many as we usually have from like Gen Con or Essen or Tokyo Game Market or anything like that. But I do want to talk about a few games, just not everything here is like brand new, just things that we picked up because it's been hard to get in Australia. I want to talk about one. I did finally get a copy of Whispering Woods because this game was on my most anticipated list, not this year, but the year before. And, I talked about this game and how hard I think the puzzle is going to be for me personally, because I really struggle with puzzles that involve color. It just does something to my brain. And like all of a sudden I don't know.
It's not a color blindness thing. It's just like a mental like
short
color
circuit.
Block.
If it's numbers or sequences, yes,
Unstoppable.
perfectly fine. Put it in black and white. And but when it's colors, no. I know
like,
this is going to be really
colors.
hard.
Great. Let's go.
This has got like a puzzle that has multiple layers to it, but it also has a chaining kind of combo effect. So I'm really excited. And the artwork here is so beautiful. Webers and Santiago artwork. So that's always amazing.
Nice. Should I go on my side?
Yeah, sure. You can talk about
this is one that I wasn't. Actually, that's not true. I did see this one and I wanted to seek it out. I didn't know it would be this small.
But can I also say that every time we met someone new, because, we just kind of went into UK Games Expo a bit blind, we didn't get a chance to do our research, we were busy researching the Tokyo Game Market. Every time we said to them, what are you most excited about? Most people said this game.
Yeah, if you're a solo player, everyone was like, oh, have you checked out this? So this is One for Sorrow. It's one of those games that you play entirely in your hand. So you're essentially kind of going through the deck in your hand. Very, very clever. We were kind of given a very brief demo by the designer. This one's still in shrink. I haven't actually had a chance to get into this one. But it's based on that poem, and I'm not going to be able to kind of remember anything apart from just One for Sorrow. and then you're essentially kind of going through all the different kind of is it like the different crows and like so it's all
ravens.
So so small, so portable, like you can just pop it in your pocket. I wouldn't, because then it's going to get damaged. But yeah, really keen to play it.
The artwork is amazing as well.
I think he did it himself as well. Like, I can't remember if he did it himself, but yeah, it's really, really cool, the artwork of that.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about a couple of games. So a designer ran over to say hi, and it's always strange when we meet designers because obviously, or anyone really, because a lot of people know what we look like and we don't know what anyone looks like. And so he was like, hey, and I was like, well, and then I saw his games. I'm like, oh my goodness, because, you talk about these designs for so long,
And sometimes you've been talking online.
Online, and we have spoken online even all the way back 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago now when we first started the channel. So the designer is James Emerson, and James often works with Tristram Rossum. So actually, we covered a game on our channel called Tranquility: The Ascent back in the day, which was a different publisher, but it was the same combo of illustrator Tristram Rossum and James Emerson, the designer. And so he's given us a copy of Tranquility: The Descent. So really intrigued to look at that because we really enjoyed the Tranquility puzzles. So this is the third one, I believe, and they're cooperative and they're really, really cool. And we covered The Ascent like years and years ago. So it was really nice to kind of be like, oh wow, meet in person. But he also had this there, and I said, oh, wait a second, wasn't that a print and play? And he was like, yeah, good memory. They had this, a Wayfarer's Tale. And so the two of them actually started a publishing company together, and now they've done that title and a Wayfarer's Tale. And this recently was really highly rated by the Dice Tower in terms of roll and write. And so I'm really excited because I was excited about it when it came out as a print and play, but I'm just not the kind of person that's going to print and play something. Maggie does with solo games sometimes.
This is a big production though, so it would have been quite what do you call it? Complex printing.
Yeah, I think they kept adding to it, and adding to it, and now they decided to publish it. So I'm really excited to get this to the table.
It's one of those where you're kind of discovering different areas, but then you're also kind of hiring specialists along the way, and it's partly a race, but it's also then the kind of race element will trigger end game, and then it's like you're still kind of encountering. I don't know if it's like enemies or monsters along the way, and also kind of collecting points along the
monsters?
way.
Ooh.
Yeah, or things that you kind of have like battling. It sort of has this almost like, and this might be completely wrong, like Oregon Trail type vibes of like you're kind of exploring and trying to like make do, but then also with these other elements.
And I like that it's not just pure writing, so you won't be able to see here, but like there's little cubes that you're moving and you're doing different things. So I'm really excited to try that out. It's quite a heavy box.
I've got a lot of little ones, so I should probably get going. So this was another one so this is the Crows
the second Crow
of Coppershell Bay, which someone just told me, because I think everyone was kind of talking about like One for Sorrow, and there's like, there's another Crow/Raven game. And this one, the theme is so quirky. I also love the artwork, which I believe the designer does the artwork as well. So I think like he's an illustrator.
He has a whole series of games.
Of games, and I kind of want to check out most of them. So this is actually, I should say, this was a solo only. This is also a solo game. But it's like you've made a deal with these crows to essentially like lend you money, and now you kind of have to come good, and you only have a certain number of days to
pay them back. Yeah.
But like, and then the artwork and the kind of town that it's sort of created is just, I'm just so impressed with. I haven't actually played it yet, but you've got 3 days before you get the beak.
And it's really cozy because you're like fishing and doing other things. So it's a really cute little world that has been created in such a tiny little tin. I was really impressed when I saw it on the table too. I was like, okay, this looks pretty good, and I like the premise of the thing.
So quirky, and like I love that kind of quirky sense of humor. So that was the other one. So what else? We talked briefly about Sakana Stack.
Yes.
So this is kind of like, is it like trick taking? I guess.
It's shedding.
Shedding.
Yeah. It's shedding. We only played a quick demo round, but we liked it enough that we're like, we'll buy a copy because it was fun. And again, it's by the same designer, Mike from Tricky Landing,
cool
and
artwork
the roller
as well. We'll
disco.
Yes, we'll have to kind of play it more to
Obviously, we haven't really played these games.
The next game is this. We have the mini version. They were actually giving out quite a lot of free copies of this one. It's called dnup.
Yeah, and so this is, you know how they were giving out Flip 7? I think that is a pretty smart way to promote the game because lots of people get their hands on it and then everyone's talking about it and sharing it with their friends and then those friends go and buy it. So
we still haven't played it.
We haven't played dnup, but everyone's been telling us that it's great.
It's similar to, it's got kind of similar elements to Scout.
Yes,
is what
I've heard that as well.
Yes. Then this one, Fetching Feathers. This is an entirely artwork pulled me in. Like the artwork did all of the sale here. I only just recently learned how to play it. Still haven't played it because I was going to play it at work and then we didn't really get a chance to. It looks quite interesting in terms of like it's the type of game where you're playing different habitats and then you're playing, the habitats will have a particular, I think like food attached to them, and then you're playing birds to like the different sides, and then the birds will have different combinations for points. So I think it'll be relatively easy to learn, hopefully a satisfying one, can't really say yet, but the artwork, oh my goodness, all these birds, and even like the inside of it, it's just, I don't know if I'll be able to kind of show this on camera, it's just incredible.
Yeah, the artwork is amazing.
Stunning artwork. Then this is one that you know more about, Circadia.
Yeah, but so Hisashi Hayashi, this game, and so, but I think that, this has been picked up obviously for broader English distribution, but I thought this was a team-based game, but maybe it's not, because now that I'm looking at it, I'm probably thinking, I think I'm thinking of a different game. I think this one's more like a tableau built set collection style game, but I don't know. I just saw Hisashi Hayashi and I am crazy about this artwork. So
it's so cute, yeah.
Yeah, and so I did read up about it and that's why I purchased it, but now I can't remember. So that's terrible. I should look that up again. But I'm really excited because the artwork is wonderful.
Circadia.
Japanese designer, so you know we're always going to pick that up.
This is actually a review copy that we're giving. This is Jackpot Set the Reel, which my understanding is, again, we haven't had a chance. We only kind of had like a bit of a demo on the table. It's Scout-like in the sense that thematically you're trying to kind of create your jackpot and get that sort of ding 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 sort of set, the magical set. And obviously getting particular sets is going to be harder than others, but then they're going to reward you more. And it's Scout-like in that you can't really rearrange your cards and you're having to kind of pull cards that are adjacent to each other. So the whole thing is, as you're kind of passing cards or drafting other cards, the location of where, the particular things that you're taking out so that you're making things kind of come together. And then I think you're also then cashing out particular rows of your jackpot. So you're essentially trying to like create your jackpot and set it up to score big.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would like normally be super attracted to the theme, but I was like, the way that the hand management worked was quite interesting. So keen to check out how it plays more. I thought it was really interesting that you could essentially put cards down in a way that meant that when you picked the pile back up, you would have a better stack of cards because of that way that you arrange your hand. So it just seems quite interesting. Yeah. So keen to check that out.
And then the other one, did you want to
go?
No,
you can do it
first. So the other one that I think this is the last one that I have on my side, Fate of Witches. So this was one that when I was looking at what are the games that are going to be there, like the artwork again immediately pulled me in.
This artwork is incredible, and actually this like style of artwork, I won't say like it was exactly the same as every other game, because it wasn't. They were all very different. But the illustrative style, in the UK was it felt very different to kind of more the Americanized style of design. And so there were lots of things that kind of drew us in just from the artwork alone.
So this was one that like I just saw the artwork and the cards and I was like, this looks just like the art is so cool. Like I love this aesthetic. And again, it's one of the ones where the designer is the illustrator. And so he was very, very obviously proud of the work that he's done. I haven't had a chance to play this yet, but it also plays solo, and the whole theme of it is like you're essentially kind of creating this coven of witches, which I think is going to translate into a bit of a tableau sort of builder and trying to make kind of good combos. It does play multiplayer, it's 1 to 4, but I'm probably most interested in trying it solo.
Of course.
Just because it's like me and the art. And that's a happy place. But maybe it'll be amazing.
Maybe.
Multiplayer.
Maybe I'll be invited to play along.
Yeah.
If it's a terrible solo, I'll be invited to play along. And the final game that I really want to talk about, because this is a game that just we didn't get a chance to play because we haven't been able to find it anywhere, and it is the Old King's Crown. So obviously this got a ton of hype. I probably don't even need to talk about it, but it is a really asymmetric game where everyone kind of is playing a different faction, and it's a beautiful production. Again, this illustrative style I absolutely love. And
so cool.
Originally the designer had reached out to us to do a preview, and at that time we'd already stopped doing previews on our channel for a number of reasons, and we're just sticking to reviews. And so it kind of was the one that got away in my mind. I was like, oh, I really wish I'd had a chance to play that game.
The glaring omission from like when we were kind of making our list for the top of last year, and then people are like, have you played it? It's like, no, we haven't played it, so we can't.
And it's really hard to get in Australia. It has just had another print run, another crowdfunding campaign, so hopefully it'll become more available. But I saw it at UK Games Expo and knew that I was not leaving without a copy. So
that's the heaviest one.
That was the heaviest one that we had to lug all the way back to Australia, along with like 60 games from Tokyo Game Market
was the one that took the most luggage space.
It really did. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed just hearing a little bit about our time at UK Games Expo. I'm not sure if we'll get back there again next year. It was like perfectly timed with our trip that we were making from Tokyo Game Market to UK Games Expo. But again, I just want to say thank you to everybody who came up and said hello. It's always so nice to meet people in person, and it's just a really friendly con. So if you're looking for a con that is just a great vibe, this is it. Like I would say this is like one of the friendliest cons that I've been to, just in terms of everybody's in a good mood and everyone's just there to have a good time and hang out.
A good combo of everything. It was like, it was super friendly, enough retail stuff, enough gaming, enough demoing. So it's just like a really nice balance, and like indie stuff as well. So like, this is great.
So that's our video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.